and they caught some of Deion's strays, right? Deion had a level of greatness that was untouchable, right? Deion could say, yeah, I'm not interviewing with these people because I'm not gonna be there in the draft. Deion could say, hey, I already ran 140. I ain't effing with no more of this testing because y'all already know I'm top 5 and it ain't tripping. Watch the film, know who I am.
A couple teams that I won't allow him to play for.
Whoa.
This is my profession. I know what's behind the curtain. We ain't got to get back there for me to understand what's not prominent for my son. I'm not doing it.
And if he doesn't listen to you?
Who? No, you must mean owners, like not my son.
Have you told him privately who you would like for him to play for?
It's not like who I would like for him to play for. It's
Deion's approach to it made other people, Deion's fame, right? Deion's success, Deion's ability to one day be a head coach in the league. Also, Deion's ability and what he's done in navigating the present, right? When we talk about college of his children and now going into the pros, this is the first thing he couldn't control.
Yeah. How does that make you feel when you see your colleagues or your peers going in on you, man? Like, how does that make you feel?
No idea, man. You have no idea.
But he is a 500 quarterback who couldn't get drafted in the first round. It's a little much. Everything is something, nothing is everything. Shedeur Sanders didn't get drafted.
They caught some of Deion's strays, and what happened next will blow your mind. Picture this, a Hall of Fame legend with untouchable greatness, a son with elite quarterback skills, and an NFL establishment that decided to play dirty politics. Ryan Clark just exposed the real reasons behind one of the most controversial draft snubs in recent memory, and trust me, this goes way deeper than you think. Deion Sanders had a level of greatness that was literally untouchable. This is a man who could walk into any room and say, yeah, I'm not interviewing with these people because I'm not going to be there in the draft. He could confidently declare, hey, I already ran a 4.40. I ain't messing with no more of this testing because y'all already know I'm top 5. Watch the film, know who I am. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is what Ryan Clark revealed that nobody saw coming. When Deion tried to protect his son the same way he protected himself during his legendary career, the NFL powers that be saw their opportunity. They've been waiting for this moment, and they struck with precision. What you're about to discover will change how you view the entire draft process forever. Let me paint you a picture of just how untouchable Deion Sanders was during his playing days, because understanding this is crucial to everything that happened to Shedeur. We're talking about a man who redefined what it meant to be a superstar athlete. Deion wasn't just confident, he was prophetic. When he said he was going to do something, it happened. When he said he wouldn't do something, nobody could make him. Ryan Clark broke this down perfectly, and here's what most people don't realize. Deion's approach worked because he had the talent to back up every single word. He could tell teams, I'm not coming to your workout because you already know what I can do. And you know what? Teams respected that because they knew he was right. His film spoke louder than any combined performance ever could. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn, and this is the part that Ryan Clark emphasized that everyone missed. Deion tried to apply that same level of control to his son's situation. He looked at the NFL landscape and said, there are a couple of teams that I won't allow him to play for. Now, on the surface, this sounds reasonable, right? A father protecting his son, using his knowledge of the league to guide his child away from potentially toxic situations. Clark revealed something crucial here. This is my profession. I know what's behind the curtain. We don't have to get back there for me to understand what's not prominent for my son. I'm not doing it, and I ain't going. This wasn't arrogance. This was a man who understood the business side of football better than almost anyone alive. But here's the kicker that Clark exposed. The NFL establishment saw this as their golden opportunity. For years, they'd watched Deion operate on his own terms, building his brand, commanding respect, and now transitioning into coaching with the same level of influence. They couldn't touch Deion directly. His legacy was too solid, his accomplishments too undeniable. So what did they do? They waited for the one moment when Deion couldn't control the narrative completely, his son's draft process. Clark pointed out that this was the first thing he couldn't control, and the NFL powers knew it. They saw Deion trying to steer his son away from certain organizations, and instead of respecting the wisdom of a Hall of Famer, they decided to make an example out of the situation. The genius of Clark's analysis is that he connected the dots that everyone else missed. This wasn't about Shedeur's arm strength or pocket presence. This was about sending a message to Deion Sanders. The message was clear. Your influence has limits, and we're going to show you exactly where those limits are. Unfortunately, Shedeur became collateral damage in a battle that was never really about him in the first place. Now here's where Ryan Clark's analysis gets really explosive, and this is the part that should make every football fan's blood boil. Clark didn't just identify what happened. He exposed the systematic character assassination that took place against Shedeur Sanders, and it was absolutely ruthless. Let me break down exactly how this played out, because the details are infuriating. Clark emphasized that the criticism surrounding Shedeur wasn't based on his football abilities. It was entirely focused on perceptions of his character and personality. Critics kept saying he was too cocky, entitled, or had attitude problems. But here's the question Clark posed that nobody could answer. How exactly were they measuring his character? Think about this for a second. These are the same analysts and executives who praise players for having swagger and confidence when it suits their narrative. But when it came to Shedeur Sanders, suddenly confidence became arrogance. Suddenly, believing in yourself became a character flaw. The hypocrisy is staggering when you really examine it. Clark made a brilliant point that everyone overlooked. It's impossible to truly gauge someone's character from the outside looking in. Yet that's exactly what was happening. People who had never spent 5 minutes in a room with Shedeur were making definitive statements about who he was as a person. They were judging his character based on social media posts, brief interviews, and, let's be honest, his last name. But here's the most damaging part of this whole campaign, and Clark nailed this perfectly. The focus on Shedeur's demeanor and off-field persona completely overshadowed his actual skills and potential as a quarterback. Instead of analyzing his film, his decision-making, his leadership on the field, or his ability to perform under pressure, the conversation became entirely about whether he was humble enough for the NFL. This is where Clark's expertise as a former player really shines through. He understands that character evaluation in the NFL is supposed to be about work ethic, leadership, resilience, and how a player responds to adversity. But none of those legitimate character traits were being discussed. Instead, it was all surface-level judgments based on public perception. The most insidious part of this character assassination was how it spread. Once a few prominent voices started questioning Shedeur's attitude, it became acceptable for everyone to pile on. It created a feedback loop where the narrative became self-reinforcing. People weren't even bothering to do their own evaluation. They were just repeating what they'd heard from others. Clark pointed out that this judgment played a major role in Shedeur's draft stock taking a significant hit, causing him to fall much further than he deserved. But the real tragedy is that this wasn't based on football evaluation. It was based on a coordinated effort to diminish his value. What makes this even more frustrating is that we've seen this playbook before. When certain players don't fit the NFL's preferred narrative or when their families are seen as too influential, suddenly character becomes the primary talking point. It's a convenient way to justify decisions that have nothing to do with football ability. This is where Ryan Clark's analysis becomes absolutely devastating to the critics, because the numbers don't lie, even when the narrative does. Clark systematically destroyed the argument that Shedeur Sanders wasn't worthy of first-round consideration by doing something revolutionary. He actually looked at the statistics instead of just repeating talking points. Let's start with the most telling stat that completely obliterates the Shedeur can't play narrative, his completion percentage. Sanders led the pack with an impressive 74%, and this isn't just slightly better than his peers, it's significantly higher. Jackson Dart, who many considered a superior prospect, sat at 69.3%. Cam Ward, another highly touted quarterback, trailed even further at 67.2%. Now, let me explain why this statistic is so crucial, because Clark understood something that many analysts missed. Completion percentage isn't just about accuracy, it's about decision-making, pocket presence, and understanding defensive concepts. When you're completing 74% of your passes at the college level, you're demonstrating elite-level processing skills. You're showing that you can read defenses, make quick decisions, and deliver the ball accurately under pressure. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Clark pointed out that Sanders finished with 37 touchdowns, just 2 behind Cam Ward's 39, while Dart managed only 29. Think about what this means. Sanders was not only more accurate than his peers, but he was also more effective in the red zone. He was finding ways to put points on the board consistently, which is exactly what you want from an NFL quarterback. The passer rating tells an even more compelling story. Sanders posted an impressive 168.2, which Clark noted was remarkable and spoke to his overall efficiency. While Dart had a slightly higher rating of 180.6, Sanders' number still demonstrates elite-level performance. This isn't the statistical profile of a quarterback who can't play at the next level. This is the profile of a highly efficient, accurate passer who knows how to win games. But here's the most damning part of Clark's analysis, and this is what should make every NFL fan question the entire evaluation process. If Sanders was supposedly so inferior to Dart and Ward, why do his statistics tell a completely different story? Clark emphasized that Sanders wasn't just throwing the ball, he was doing so with precision and control. The statistical evidence becomes even more compelling when you consider the context. Sanders was playing for Colorado, a program that was rebuilding and facing intense scrutiny every single week. He was operating under a microscope that most college quarterbacks never experience, yet he still managed to post elite-level numbers across multiple categories. Clark's breakdown of these statistics wasn't just about defending Sanders, it was about exposing how the evaluation process had been corrupted by non-football factors. When you ignore a quarterback's completion percentage, touchdown production, and passer rating in favor of subjective character assessments, you're not doing legitimate scouting, you're pushing an agenda. The numbers don't lie, but apparently, the narrative does. And Clark made sure everyone understood the difference. Now we're getting to the part of Ryan Clark's expose that should make every football fan absolutely furious, because this reveals just how deep the manipulation went. Clark uncovered something that nobody else was talking about, the mysterious case of Shedeur Sanders' interview footage and how it was weaponized against him. Here's the smoking gun that Clark identified. If the Giants had access to Jackson Dart's interview footage and even released it to the public for scrutiny, why hasn't Shedeur Sanders' video been made available? This isn't just a minor oversight. This is a deliberate decision that raises serious questions about the integrity of the entire evaluation process. Think about the implications of this for a moment. In today's NFL, everything is documented, analyzed, and dissected. Teams record interviews, workouts, and meetings specifically so they can review them later and share information with other decision makers. The idea that Sanders' interview footage would just disappear or remain unavailable is absolutely absurd. Clark posed the critical questions that nobody else was asking. Could there be something in his interview that the Giants don't want the public to see? Or is it simply a matter of not wanting to further fuel the controversy? Either answer is damning. If there's something in the interview that contradicts the negative narrative, then the Giants are complicit in a cover-up. If they're withholding it to avoid controversy, then they're admitting that the evaluation process has been compromised by external factors. But the manipulation goes even deeper than just hiding interview footage. Clark exposed how so-called journalists began lashing out at the Sanders family, turning their focus to Deion as well, accusing him of being responsible for Shedeur's fall in the draft. This wasn't legitimate journalism, this was character assassination disguised as sports analysis. The most insidious part of this media manipulation was how it created a self-reinforcing narrative. Once a few prominent voices started questioning Sanders' interview performance, it became acceptable for everyone to pile on without any actual evidence. People were making definitive statements about how Sanders performed in interviews they'd never seen, based on reports from sources they couldn't verify. Clark identified the real genius of this manipulation. What was conveniently ignored was the fact that the entire situation had been manipulated by NFL powers and teams. The narrative was being shaped behind the scenes, and Shedeur's draft stock had been undermined from the start. This wasn't organic criticism based on legitimate concerns. This was a coordinated effort to control the narrative. The media's role in this conspiracy becomes even more obvious when you look at how quickly the narrative shifted after Sanders' OTA performances. Suddenly, the same critics who had been questioning his abilities were praising his potential. Colin Cowherd, who had been one of Sanders' loudest critics, did a complete 180 and started calling him one of the best quarterbacks on the Browns roster. This dramatic shift exposes the entire charade. If Sanders was really as flawed as the pre-draft narrative suggested, his abilities wouldn't have suddenly improved overnight. The only thing that changed was the willingness to acknowledge what had been obvious all along. Ryan Clark's explosive analysis reveals a truth that goes far beyond one draft pick. This was never really about Shedeur Sanders' abilities as a quarterback. This was about the NFL establishment sending a message to Deion Sanders and anyone else who dares to operate outside their preferred system. Clark's perspective cuts through all the noise and gets to the heart of the matter. The real struggle was never about Shedeur's abilities but about the reaction to Deion's greatness. When you have a Hall of Fame legend who built his career on his own terms, who transitioned into coaching with the same level of influence, and who wasn't afraid to protect his son from potentially toxic situations, the NFL powers saw an opportunity to reassert control. The statistics don't lie. 74% completion percentage, 37 touchdowns, 168.2 passer rating. The film doesn't lie. Leadership under pressure, accuracy in crucial moments, the ability to elevate his game when it mattered most. But none of that mattered when there was a larger battle being fought. What happened to Shedeur Sanders should serve as a wake-up call to every football fan about how the evaluation process can be corrupted by factors that have nothing to do with football. When character assassination replaces legitimate scouting, when interview footage disappears, and when media narratives shift overnight based on political considerations rather than performance, we're not talking about sports anymore, we're talking about power and control. The most telling part of this entire saga is how quickly the narrative changed once Sanders got on the field and started proving his critics wrong. Suddenly, the same people who questioned his abilities were singing his praises. This dramatic shift exposes the entire charade and proves that the pre-draft criticism was never based on legitimate football evaluation. As Clark pointed out, Shedeur's journey became a casualty of the larger battle against Deion's larger-than-life presence. But here's the thing about casualties in battles like this. Sometimes they come back stronger than ever, with a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. What do you think? Was this a coordinated attack on the Sanders family or legitimate concerns about Shedeur's readiness for the NFL? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the stories. The truth is always more interesting than the narrative they want you to believe.